The massive ship came out of fold space like a creature waking from a long sleep. It was followed by 16 others, each one large enough to carry 10,000 soldiers. Together, they formed the Valori Reclamation Fleet. And they had traveled across the stars for one simple reason. They had come to collect a dead world. Prime Orin stood at the center of the command bridge, his tall gray body perfectly still as he watched the holographic display before him. The blue and green planet spinning slowly in the projection was Earth, a world the Velour had visited 400 years ago and then abandoned. "Bring up the old records," Orin commanded. The display changed. Now it showed images from the first Velori visit to Earth. Primitive cities. Smoke rising from factories. Weapons that used fire and metal to kill. Humans fighting humans over lines drawn on maps. Orin remembered studying these records when he was young. The Velori had sent a survey team to Earth during what the humans called their industrial age. The team had watched the small creatures for 2 years before making their report. The report had been simple. Humanity was a failed species. They were destroying their own air. They were poisoning their own water. They fought endless wars over resources they could have shared. They had barely managed to send a few of their kind to their own moon. Even that seemed to exhaust them. The Velori Collective had read the report and made a decision. Earth was not worth saving. The humans would be dead within 300 years, maybe less. The planet would then be empty, and the Valori could take its metals, its water, its land for their own use. So they had left Earth behind and marked it on their maps as a future reclamation zone. A dead world waiting to be harvested. Now, 400 years later, Orin had been given the honor of leading the fleet that would finally claim Earth. It should have been a simple mission. Land on the empty planet. Set up mining operations. Report back to the collective. But something was wrong. Surveyor Len stood at the scanning station, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. She was younger than Orin, with pale gray skin and large dark eyes that now showed confusion. "Prime Orin," she said, her voice uncertain. "The readings are not correct." Orin turned to look at her. "Explain." "The atmosphere," Len said. "It should be toxic by now. Our projections showed that human pollution would destroy the air within 2 centuries. But the readings show clean air. Oxygen levels are stable. Carbon levels are lower than when we first visited." Orin frowned. Perhaps the projections were wrong. Perhaps the atmosphere cleaned itself after the humans died. "That is possible," Len agreed. "But there is more. I am detecting electromagnetic signals from the planet's surface. Organized signals. Billions of them." The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned to look at Len. "That is impossible," said Arbiter Kess from the far side of the room. He was old, even by Valori standards, and he had been part of the team that made the original decision to abandon Earth. The humans were destroying themselves. They could not have survived. "I am only reporting what the scanners show," Len replied carefully. Orin walked slowly toward the main display. He enlarged the image of Earth and studied it closely. The planet looked healthy. Green forests covered the land. The oceans were blue and clear. And yes, now that he looked carefully, he could see lights on the dark side of the planet. Millions of lights, clustered in patterns that could only mean cities, living cities. "Run the scan again," Orin ordered. Len did as she was told. The results were the same. Earth was not dead. Earth was very much alive. Arbiter Kess moved closer to Orin. "This changes nothing," he said quietly, so that only Orin could hear. "The collective marked this world for reclamation. The humans are primitive. Even if some of them survived, they cannot resist us." Orin wanted to believe this. The Valori had conquered dozens of worlds. They had technology that younger species could not understand. Surely a few surviving humans would pose no threat. But something bothered him. The humans should not have survived at all. The Valori projections were rarely wrong. Their scientists had studied Earth carefully and concluded that humanity had no future. Yet here they were. 400 years later, and the planet below was full of life. "Move the fleet closer," Orin ordered. "I want detailed scans of everything. Cities, technology, population, defenses. I want to know exactly what we are dealing with. The fleet moved forward, crossing the outer boundary of the solar system. They passed the cold outer planets and the belt of rocks and ice that circled the sun. They moved closer and closer to Earth, and then Len gasped. "Prime Orin," she said. "I am detecting ships. Human ships. How many?" Len was quiet for a moment. Her fingers trembled over the controls. "Thousands," she finally said. "Stationed on their moon, orbiting their planet, spread across this system, and they are not primitive ships. Their energy signatures are... She stopped, unable to finish. "Their energy signatures are what?" Orin demanded. Len looked up at him with something close to fear in her eyes. "Their energy signatures are equal to ours." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Orin stared at the display as it filled with markers showing human vessels, small, fast ships that moved in perfect formation around Earth and its moon. This was not a dead world. This was not a primitive species waiting to be conquered. Somehow, against all predictions, against all logic, humanity had not only survived, they had risen. Arbiter Kess made a small sound, something between disbelief and horror. He had signed the order to abandon Earth. He had been certain that the humans would die. For 400 years, he had believed he had made the right decision now. Looking at the display filled with human ships and human cities and human signals, he realized the truth. The Vellery had made a terrible mistake, and as the fleet continued moving toward Earth, Orin understood something else. The humans had surely detected them by now. They knew the Vellery were coming. The question was, what would they do about it? Orin straightened his back and gave his next order. "Open a channel to the collective. Tell them the situation has changed. Tell them Earth is not dead." He paused, staring at the blue planet that should have been a graveyard. "Tell them the humans are waiting for us." The alarm reached Commander Yuna in the middle of the night. She was sleeping in her small room at the lunar command station when the SE red light began flashing, and the soft voice of the computer spoke two words that changed. "Everything, they're here." Yuna was out of bed in seconds. She had trained for this moment since she was 16 years old. Every human in the Defense Force had trained for this moment. For 400 years, humanity had wondered if the Vellery would return. Now, finally, the wondering was over. She ran through the metal hallways of the station until she reached the command center. Officers were already at their positions, their faces serious but calm. On the main screen, 17 red dots moved slowly through the solar system. "How long until they reach Earth?" Yuna asked. 6 hours at their current speed," replied Officer Junho, a young man with short black hair and steady hands. "They crossed the outer detection grid 20 minutes ago." Yuna nodded. The detection grid had been Taiho's greatest achievement. He had spent 30 years studying the fragments of Vellery technology left behind on Earth and had built a system that could spot fold space exits anywhere in the solar system. The aliens thought they had arrived in secret. They were wrong. "Activate Protocol Homecoming," Yuna ordered. The word sent a wave of activity across the command center. Officers typed commands into their stations. Signals went out to every defense platform, every ship, every colony in human space. Within minutes, the entire United Earths Federation would know that the moment they had prepared for had finally arrived. Yuna opened a channel to Earth. The face of Ambassador Mira appeared on screen. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many difficult negotiations. Behind her, Yuna could see the Global Unity Hall in Neo-Sol. It's already filling with representatives from every nation on Earth. "I've seen the reports," Myra said. 17 ships. Big ones. "Bigger than anything we've built," Yuna admitted. "But we've run the numbers. If they came for war, we can make them regret it. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." Mira paused. "What do you need from me?" "I need you ready to talk. If they want to fight, they'll get one. But if there's even a small chance they came in peace, we should know before the shooting starts." Mira nodded. "I'll be ready." The channel closed. Yuna turned to see Hannah walking into the command center. She was young, barely 25, with short hair and the confident walk of someone who had grown up flying ships. She was the best pilot in the lunar squadron, and she was also the one Yuna worried about most. "I'm taking my squad out," Hannah said. It was not a question. "This isn't a training exercise," Yuna replied. "Those ships out there could destroy this entire station with one shot." Hannah smiled. "Then I'll make sure they don't get that shot." Before Yuna could argue, Hannah was gone, running toward the hangar where her ship waited. Yuna watched her go and felt a mix of pride and fear. Hannah reminded her of herself at that age, brave, maybe too brave. On Earth. Chief Scientist Taiho stood in his laboratory watching the same red dots on his own screen. He was an old man now, with white hair and tired eyes, but his mind was still sharp. He had spent his entire life preparing for this day. 40 years ago, Taiho had been a young researcher studying old records from the first Valori visit. Most people thought the records were useless, just blurry images and broken equipment left behind by the aliens when they abandoned Earth. But Taiho had found something important hidden in the fragments, Language it had taken him 15 years to decode it, another 10 years to build machines that could translate it in real time. Now, as the Valori fleet approached Earth, humanity had something the aliens did not expect. They could talk to them. Taiho opened a channel to Ambassador Mira. "The translation system is ready. When you speak to them, they will understand every word." Mira raised an eyebrow. "And when they speak to us, we will understand them too." Taiho allowed himself a small smile. "They think we're primitives who cannot even leave our own planet. They don't know what we've become." In space, Hannah's ship launched from the lunar station. Behind her came 12 other pilots, each one hand-picked for this mission. Their ships were small and fast, built using designs that human engineers had created by studying Valor technology and then improving on it. Hannah looked at the approaching fleet on her display. The Valori ships were massive, each one covered in weapons and armor. Any one of them could destroy her entire squadron without effort. But Hannah was not afraid. She had been born into a world that remembered what the Valori had done. She had grown up hearing stories of the abandonment, of the dark centuries that followed, of the billions who had died because the aliens decided humanity was not worth saving. She would not let them make that choice again. "All ships, form up," she commanded through the radio. "We're going to say hello." The squadron moved together, flying in perfect formation toward the alien fleet. On the Valori command ship, Surveyor Len detected them immediately. "Human vessels approaching," she reported. 12 small ships, moving fast. Prime Orin studied the display. The human ships were tiny compared to his fleet. They should have been no threat at all. But something about the way they moved bothered him. They flew with precision, with confidence. They did not look like a primitive species sending out their first defense force. They looked like soldiers who knew exactly what they were doing. "Open a channel," Orin ordered. "Let us see what these humans have to say." The channel opened. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a voice came through, clear and calm, speaking in perfect Valori language. "Valori Fleet, this is Ambassador Mira of the United Earth Federation. You have entered protected sovereign space. State your intentions or withdraw." The bridge fell silent. Orin stared at the speaker as if it had betrayed him. The human was speaking his language. Not broken words or simple phrases, but fluent, perfect Valori language. "How is this possible?" Arbiter Kess whispered. "We left nothing behind. No records, no teaching machines, nothing." But Orin remembered. They had left fragments, broken equipment, small pieces of technology that they had thought too damaged to matter. The humans had taken those fragments and learned from them. They had decoded the Valori language. They had studied Valori technology. They had prepared for 400 years while the Valori forgot about Earth. The humans had been getting ready for this exact moment. Orin stepped forward. "This is Prime Orin of the Valori Reclamation Fleet. We have come to..." He stopped. What could he say? That they had come to take the planet from a dead species? That they had come to harvest a world they had abandoned to die? Ambassador Mira's voice came again. We know why you have come, Primoran. We have long memories. But as you can see, Earth is not yours to reclaim. Hannah's squadron flew closer, their weapons powered up, ready for anything. On the lunar station, Yuna watched the display with her hands clenched into fists, and on Earth, Taiho looked up at the stars and smiled. The Valori had finally returned. They had come expecting to find dust and bones. Instead, they had found humanity waiting for them. Primoran agreed to the talks. He told himself it was strategy, a way to learn more about the humans before making his next move. But deep inside, he knew the truth. He was curious. The species that should have been dead was very much alive, and he needed to understand how. A small Valerie shuttle carried Orin, Surveyor Len, and Arbiter Kess down through Earth's atmosphere. Through the windows, they watched the planet grow larger and larger. Clouds passed by like white rivers. Oceans sparkled under the sun, and then they saw the cities. Len pressed her face against the glass, her dark eyes wide. The cities were enormous. Towers reached up into the sky, so tall that their tops disappeared into the clouds. Green plants grew on every surface, walls, rooftops, bridges. Flying vehicles moved between the buildings in organized lines, hundreds of thousands of them. "This is not possible," Kess muttered. "They were burning coal and killing each other over oil when we left. They cannot have built this in 400 years. But they had." The shuttle landed in Neo Sol, in a wide plaza surrounded by the tallest buildings any of them had ever seen. A small group of humans waited for them. Ambassador Myra stood at the front, wearing a simple gray uniform. Beside her was an old man with silver hair and a face full of wrinkles. His name was Sunho, and he was a historian. He had spent his entire life studying the day the Valori left Earth behind. "Welcome to Earth," Mira said as the aliens stepped out of their shuttle. Her voice was polite but not warm. "We have prepared a tour for you. We think it's important that you see what has happened here since your last visit." Orin wanted to refuse. He wanted to demand negotiations, to talk about treaties and borders in the future. But Len touched his arm gently. "You should see," she whispered. "We need to understand." Orin nodded slowly. "Very well." Showa Sunho led the way. He walked slowly, his old legs not as strong as they once were, but his voice was clear and steady as he talked. "When your people came 400 years ago, we were a young species," he began. "We had many nations, many languages, many conflicts. You watched us for 2 years and decided we were not worth saving. You marked our world for reclamation and left us to die." Kess opened his mouth to protest, but Sunho held up a hand. "I am not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I am telling you this because you need to understand what happened next." They walked through the streets of Neo Sol. People moved around them, going about their daily lives. Some looked at the tall gray aliens with curiosity. Others nodded respectfully at Sunho and continued on their way. No one seemed afraid. "After you left, we almost proved you right," Sunho continued. "The climate changed. Wars broke out over water and food. A plague killed 2 billion people in a single year. By the end of the 21st century, our population had dropped to less than 3 billion. We came very close to extinction." They stopped before a large building made of dark stone. Above the entrance, words were carved in dozens of languages. Sunho translated them. "We remember, so we never forget." "This is the Museum of the Forsaken," Sunho said. "This is where we keep the memory of everything that happened after your people left us behind." Inside, the museum was quiet and cool. Light came from panels in the ceiling, soft and gentle. The walls were covered with images, documents, and objects from the dark centuries. Len walked slowly through the exhibits. She saw photographs of burning cities and flooded coastlines. She saw lists of names, millions of names, billions of names, the dead from wars and plagues and famines. She saw the records of governments falling, of nations collapsing, of hope almost disappearing completely. And then she saw something else. A section of the museum showed the turning point, the moment when humanity chose to change. "It happened around the year 2089, Sunho explained. "We had lost so much. Our old ways of living had failed. We had a choice: continue fighting each other until no one was left, or work together to survive. The exhibit showed the formation of the first Global Council. Leaders from every remaining nation came together and agreed to share resources, share technology, share knowledge. It was not easy. Old hatreds did not disappear overnight. But slowly, generation by generation, humanity began to heal. We rebuilt our atmosphere using machines we designed ourselves, Sunho said. We developed new ways to grow food that did not poison the land. We created energy from the sun and the wind and the atom. Every solution came from our own minds, our own hands. He looked directly at Oren. Your people gave us nothing. No guidance, no technology, no help. You decided we were failures and left us to die. Everything you see around you, every building, every ship, every life, exists because we refuse to accept your judgment. Akis stood very still. His face was gray, even for a Valori. He had signed the order to abandon Earth. He had written the words that declared humanity a failed emergence. For 4 centuries, he had believed those words were true. Now he stood in a city more advanced than most Valori colonies. Built by a species he had sentenced to death, Len found her voice. How did you learn to build ships like the ones we saw in orbit? Our technology took thousands of years to develop. Sunho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You left fragments behind when you departed. Broken equipment. Damaged devices. Our scientists took those fragments and studied them. We learned your language. We understood your basic principles. And then we improved on them. Improved. Oren repeated. Your full drive technology uses enormous amounts of energy and creates unstable passages through space, Sunho said. Our version is smaller, faster, and more stable. Your medical technology can extend life by perhaps 50 years. Ours has doubled the natural human lifespan. Your weapons are powerful, but ours are more precise. He paused, letting his words sink in. We did not just catch up to you, Prime Oren. In many ways, we have surpassed you. And we did it all while you were gone, believing we were already dead. They continued through the museum. The final exhibit showed the present-day maps of human colonies on other worlds, images of space stations and starships. Data showing a population of 15 billion humans, spread across 17 planets. Len studied the data with growing amazement. The rate of your advancement is unprecedented. No species in Valori records has developed this quickly. Suffering is a powerful teacher, Sunho replied. We learned from our mistakes because the cost of not learning was extinction. Every challenge made us stronger. Every loss made us more determined. Oren stood in the center of the final room, surrounded by evidence of human achievement. He had come to Earth expecting to find ruins and bones. Instead, he had found a civilization that rivaled his own, and he had found something else. Something that worried him more than the ships and weapons and technology. He had found a species with a long memory and no fear. The humans remembered being abandoned. They remembered the dark centuries. They remembered every death, every struggle, every moment of despair. And they had built all of this while carrying that memory with them. As they left the museum, Kes walked up beside Sunho. The old alien's voice was quiet, almost broken. Did you build this museum to make us feel shame? Sunho shook his head. We built this museum so that we would never forget what we survived. Your shame is your own burden to carry. Kes had no answer to that. Outside, the sun was setting over Neo-Sol. The towers glowed with golden light, and the evening sky was filled with ships coming and going from the stars. Oren looked up at those ships and finally understood the truth. The Valori had not come to reclaim a dead world. They had come to meet the consequences of their greatest mistake. Taiho met the Valori delegation the next morning. He arrived at their temporary quarters with a simple request. I would like to show you something beyond Earth, he said. If you truly want to understand what humanity has become, you need to see our reach. Prime Oren was suspicious. Every hour he spent on Earth made him feel smaller, and he did not like the feeling. But he also knew that refusing would make him look afraid. So he agreed. They boarded a human vessel, a sleek ship that looked almost alive, smooth curves and lights that pulsed gently along its surface. The inside was comfortable, but simple. Humans, Oren noticed, did not waste space on decoration. Everything had a purpose. Commander Yuna was waiting on the bridge. She nodded at the aliens but did not smile. Behind her, through the main window, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black of space. "Where are we going?" Len asked. Tejo pointed to a structure floating near the moon, a massive ring of metal and light that glowed with energy. "That is a fold gate," he explained. "We built our first one 60 years ago. Now we have gates connecting all of our major colonies." Oren stared at the gate. It was larger than anything the Valora used for fold travel. Much larger. "You've built this?" Kess asked. "Based on the fragments we left behind?" "Based on the fragments," Tejo agreed, "but improved significantly. Your fold technology tears holes in space and forces ships through them. Our gates create stable tunnels that last as long as we need them. Faster, safer, more efficient." The ship moved toward the gate. As they approached, the ring began to glow brighter. Energy swirled in its center, like water going down a drain, and then a tunnel opened, a passage through. Space itself, they flew through. On the other side was a star system Oren did not recognize. A yellow sun burned at the center, surrounded by rocky planets and gas giants. But what caught his attention was the activity. Ships moved everywhere, cargo vessels, passenger transports, mining platforms. A space station the size of a small moon hung in orbit around the third planet. "Welcome to New Busan," Tejo said. "Our oldest colony? Founded 92 years ago. The planet below was green and blue like Earth." Len ran scans, and her breath caught in her throat. "You terraformed this world," she said. "It was a dead rock when you arrived, and you made it alive." "It took 40 years," Yuna said from the pilot seat. "We made mistakes. We lost people, but we never stopped trying." They flew past New Busan and through another fold gate, then another, and another. At each stop, Oren saw more evidence of human expansion, mining operations in asteroid fields, research stations orbiting gas giants, colonies on moons and planets that the Valor had never bothered to visit. 17 worlds, 3 terraformed moons. Billions of humans spread across the stars. All of this had been built in 400 years. All of this had been built by a species the Vellery had left to die. Len's hands trembled as she studied her scanner. The data told her something that she did not want to accept. "Their expansion rate is 3 times faster than ours was at this stage," she whispered to Oren. "If they continue at this pace, they will reach Valerie territory within 50 years. Within 200 years, they could rival our total holdings." Duh! Oren did not respond. He was looking at a group of human soldiers training on a nearby station. Young men and women moving with perfect coordination. Their bodies enhanced with technology that the Vellery did not fully understand. Tejo noticed his gaze. "We have been preparing for 400 years," he said quietly. "Every generation has trained for the possibility that you would return, not as guests, but as invaders." "You thought we would attack you?" Oren asked. Tejo's eyes were hard. "You abandoned us to die? You marked our world for reclamation, like we were nothing but resources to be harvested. We had no reason to expect kindness from you." They returned to Earth through the Foldgate network. The journey that should have taken weeks by normal space travel took less than an hour. Oren sat in silence, his mind racing. Everything the Valori believed about humanity was wrong. They had thought humans were primitive, violent, doomed. Instead, humans were clever, determined, and growing stronger every year. And they remembered. That was the most dangerous part. They remembered what the Valori had done, and they had built their entire civilization with that memory at its heart. On the bridge, Yuna turned to face the aliens. She had been quiet throughout the tour, watching and waiting. Now she spoke. "You came here expecting to find nothing," she said. "Maybe some ruins. Maybe some survivors living in caves. Instead, you found us." Oren met her eyes. "Yes, so now I have a question for you, Prime Oren. Yuna's voice was calm but firm. Why did you really come? You said this was a reclamation mission? But you must have known there was a chance we survived. Your ships carry weapons. Your soldiers are ready for battle. So tell me the truth. Did you come here to take our world by force? Orin was silent for a long moment. The truth was complicated. The Valori Collective had sent him expecting an easy mission, land on a dead planet, set up operations, report back. They had not truly believed humans would be alive, but they had prepared for that possibility, just in case. The Collective gave me authority to do what was necessary, Orin finally admitted. If you had been weak, if you had been struggling, I might have been ordered to help you, to bring you under Valori protection. Protection, Yuna repeated. The words sounded bitter in her mouth. Conquest, Kess corrected quietly. We would have conquered you, taken your resources, made your people serve us. He looked at Orin with tired eyes. There is no point in lying now. They can see what we are. Len looked away, ashamed. She had believed the Valori were a noble species, bringing order to the galaxy. But standing here, surrounded by humans who had built an empire from nothing, she saw her people differently. The Valori took from others. Humans built for themselves. Yuna nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty, Arbiter Kess. It is more than we expected. She turned back to the controls. We are returning to Earth now. Ambassador Mira is waiting. She has a proposal for you. The ship descended through Earth's atmosphere. As they approached Neo-Sol, Orin looked down at the cities and the forests and the clean oceans. This world should have been his. The Valori had marked it for reclamation 400 years ago, but the world had other ideas. The people had other ideas, and now Orin had to face the truth. The Valori had not come to reclaim a lost planet. They had come to meet a new power, a species that had risen from the ashes of abandonment and built something remarkable. The question now was simple. What would the Valori do about it? They landed at the Global Unity Hall, where Mira and Sunho were waiting. Behind them stood representatives from every human colony, every nation, every organization in the United Earth Federation. Thousands of faces watching the aliens walk down the ramp. No fear, no hatred, just patience. We have seen your empire, Orin said to Mira. It is impressive. But I do not understand why you are showing us all of this. Are you trying to threaten us? To prove your strength? Mira shook her head. We are showing you the truth. You need to see it before we can talk about the future. And what future do you propose? Myra smiled for the first time. It was not a warm smile, but it was genuine. It depends entirely on you, Prime Orin. You came here expecting to take. We are offering you the chance to receive. But first, you need to decide what kind of species the Valori truly want to be. She gestured toward the hall. Shall we discuss it? Orin looked at the humans waiting for him, patient, strong, unafraid. He thought about everything he had seen, everything he had learned. Then he walked forward to face the consequences of 400 years of mistakes. The negotiations lasted 3 days. On the first day, Prime Orin made demands. He spoke of Valori rights, of ancient claims, of the original survey that had marked Earth for reclamation. Ambassador Myra listened politely and then explained, in clear and simple terms, why none of those claims mattered anymore. You abandoned a world you believed would die, she said. You cannot claim ownership of something you threw away. On the second day, Orin tried a different approach. He warned of Valori military power, of the vast fleets that could be summoned from across the galaxy. He spoke of other species who had challenged the collective and lost. Yuna responded by displaying data from her defense network, detailed scans of every Valori ship, their weapons, their weaknesses. She showed simulations of battles that humans had been planning for centuries. We do not want war, Yuna said, but if you force it upon us, we will not lose. Orin looked at the simulations. He saw Valori ships burning. He saw tactics he had never imagined. He saw a species that had spent 400 years preparing for exactly this moment. You would truly fight us? He asked. We would truly survive, Yuna replied. That is what we do. On the third day, something changed. Arbiter Kess asked to speak privately with Sunho. They met in a small garden near the Unity Hall. Surrounded by flowers that humans had saved from extinction during the Dark Centuries, Kess moved slowly. The weight of everything he had seen pressed down on him like a physical burden. He sat on a stone bench and looked at the flowers without really seeing them. "I signed the order," he said. 400 years ago, I read the reports about your species, and I signed the order to abandon you. I wrote the words failed emergence with my own hand." Sunho sat beside him. He said nothing, waiting. "I was so certain," Kess continued. "Your species was destroying itself. The data was clear. Every projection showed that humanity would be extinct within 3 centuries. He laughed bitterly. "We pride ourselves on our science, our predictions, our careful analysis. And we were completely wrong." "You were not wrong about everything," Sunho said. "We nearly did destroy ourselves. The projections were accurate for the path we were on." "Then how did you survive?" Sunho was quiet for a moment. He watched a small bird land on a nearby branch and begin to sing. "We chose differently," he finally said. "When everything fell apart, when it seemed like the projections would come true, we looked at ourselves and decided to change. Not because it was easy, but because the alternative was extinction." He turned to face Kess. "Your people looked at us and saw only what we were. You did not see what we could become. That was your mistake." Kess closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet with something like tears. "How can you offer us peace?" he asked. "After everything we did, abandoning you, planning to conquer you, treating you like animals to be harvested, how can you possibly offer us anything but hatred?" Sunho considered the question carefully. "Because hatred is a chain," he said. "It binds you to the past. It makes you repeat its mistakes. We spent our darkest centuries fighting each other over old wounds and old grievances. Millions died because we could not let go of our anger." He gestured at the garden around them. "We learned that survival requires something more than strength. It requires the ability to grow beyond your own history. If we answer your cruelty with cruelty, we become no better than you were. We refuse to make that choice." Kess stared at the old human. In his entire long life, he had never met anyone like Sunho. The Valori were proud of their civilization, their power, their dominance over younger species. But here was a man from a species they had condemned to death, offering forgiveness instead of revenge. "You are better than us," Kess whispered. Sunho shook his head. "No, we are simply different. We had to be, or we would not have survived." That evening, Primorin returned to his flagship. He stood on the bridge, looking down at Earth through the main window. 17 Valori ships floated in space around him, filled with soldiers and weapons, enough firepower to destroy cities, to kill millions, and it would not be enough. He had seen the human defenses. He had seen their ships, their weapons, their technology. But more than that, he had seen their determination. These were not a people who would surrender. They would fight to the last breath. They would make the Valori pay dearly for every inch of ground. Surveyor Len approached him quietly. "Primorin, what will you tell the collective?" Orin did not answer immediately. He thought about his orders to reclaim a dead world, to harvest its resources, to bring glory to the Velar. He thought about what he had found instead. "I will tell them the truth," he said finally. "Earth is not ours to take. Humanity is not ours to conquer. The species we abandoned has become something we did not expect, and we must accept that reality. The collective will not be pleased. The collective can send another fleet if they wish. They will find the same thing I found, a species that will not bow, will not break, will not surrender." Orin turned to face Len. "We made a mistake 400 years ago. We cannot undo it. All we can do now is decide how to move forward." The next morning, the final meeting took place in the Global Unity Hall. Representatives from both species filled the room. Valori officers in their formal uniforms, human delegates from every colony and nation. The air was tense with history. Ambassador Mira stood at the center, holding a simple document. "This treaty represents a new beginning," she said. "It acknowledges human sovereignty over Earth and all colonies established in our region of space. It establishes borders between human and Velori territory. And it opens the possibility of trade, communication, and peaceful cooperation between our species. She looked at Orin. We are not offering this treaty because we are weak. We are offering it because we believe there is a better path than war. The choice is yours. Orin took the document and read it carefully. The terms were fair, more than fair, considering what the Velori had done. Humanity was offering peace when they had every right to demand revenge. Why? He asked. You could have attacked us the moment we arrived. You could have shown us the same mercy we showed you none at all. Why are you choosing differently? It was Sunho who answered. The old historian stepped forward, his silver hair bright in the light. Because we learned something during our darkest centuries, he said. We learned that destruction is easy. Any species can burn and kill and conquer. But building is hard. Growing is hard. Becoming better than you were is the hardest thing of all. He looked around the room at the humans and aliens gathered together. You left us to die? We survived. You expected to find ruins. You found cities. You came with weapons. We met you with words. He smiled gently. This is what humanity became. Not a species of warriors seeking revenge, but a species of builders seeking something better. Orin looked at the document in his hands. Then he looked at the humans around him, scientists and soldiers, diplomats and historians, young and old. They were watching him without fear, without hatred. They were offering him a chance to be better. He signed the treaty hours later. The Velori fleet prepared to depart. Orin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance. Beside him, Kes and Len were silent, lost in their own thoughts. What happens now? Len asked. We return home, Orin said. We tell the collective what we found, and we prepare for a future where humanity stands beside us, not beneath us. They will surpass us eventually, Kes said quietly. Their growth rate, their innovation, their determination within 2 centuries. They will be stronger than the collective. Orin nodded. He had seen the same projections. The species the Velori had abandoned was rising, and nothing could stop them now. Then we must become better ourselves, Orin replied. We must learn from them, as they learned from our fragments, or we will be left behind. The fleet jumped to fold space, carrying the treaty and a warning back to the Velori collective. The warning was not written down, but every officer understood it. Earth was no longer forsaken. Earth was watching. And Earth remembered. Back on Earth, Hannah stood on the observation deck of the Lunar Command Station, watching the Velori ships disappear into the darkness. Yuna and Taiho stood beside her, along with hundreds of other humans who had gathered to witness this moment. Do you think they'll keep the peace? Hannah asked. And if they don't? If they come back with more ships, more weapons? Taiho smiled. Then we'll be ready. We've been getting ready for 400 years. We can wait a little longer. Hannah looked up at the stars, the same stars that humans had once dreamed of reaching, back when they were burning coal and fighting over borders. Now those stars were within reach. Now humanity had colonies on distant worlds and ships that could cross the galaxy, all because they had refused to die. What do we do now? She asked. Yuna put a hand on her shoulder. We keep building. We keep growing. We keep becoming more than we were. She looked up at the endless night sky. The Velori gave us nothing. We made everything from nothing, and we're just getting started. The stars twinkled in the darkness, full of possibility and promise. Somewhere out there, the Velori were carrying news of humanity back to their empire. They would speak of Earth with wonder and fear, warning others of the species that had risen from abandonment. But on Earth, there was no fear. There was only hope.